If you're the type of J.O. that puts the COVID mask over your mouth and not your nose, then we know you definitely put the condom on your balls and not your wiener. Well, then you should be listening to Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast. I'm Rock.
And I'm Archie. Our opinions, they might not matter to some, but...
What are you doing in there?
It's a podcast.
Immature, crass, trashy. And those are their good qualities. These poor schmucks are a couple of IQ points away from eating paste. But when it comes to music, sports, and comedy, well, that's all they know. You're listening to
Not These Two Fucking Guys.
Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast.
So my favorite movie of all time is Back to the Future. Right? What is it about?
Great Scott, Marty.
It's about time travel.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you a little time travel story.
Okay.
So I have a bunch of time travel stories, but this one is... So we're at Vinny's bachelor party. You remember this? We were together.
Yes.
Down in Atlantic City. We played golf. It was hot as a motherfucker.
Yeah.
We drank all day, dinner. Then we proceeded to go to that Cuban restaurant in the Trop.
Okay. Yes. I know exactly.
We legit drank, I'm going to say, over a bottle or two of Jameson.
Still burping it up. Go ahead.
That night, I turned into, sometimes what I do is like, shot guy. Come on, dude, shot, bro. What are you, fucking pussy? Do a fucking shot.
Yeah.
So, turns out, bad idea. So, we're fucking meandering and hopping around the fucking Tropicana. We go to like I thought it was an Irish pub or something. And I'm like, I look over, I'm sitting at the bar, 2 sheets to the wind. You're next to me as usual, watching a fucking cover band play, right?
Correct.
It feels like fucking, I'm going to say 5 minutes later or another drink. Bartender cuts me off. Like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not as thick as you just am. Dude. And I'm like, I can't believe this. I'm like, Arch, what do you think? I'm like, and the fucking band isn't on anymore? I'm like, what the fuck? And as a matter of fact, where the fuck did they even set up? I'm like, I don't even see equipment. I'm like, you're like, hey, that was 2 bars ago, jerk off. No recollection. Zero fucking recollection. Time travel from fucking 2 bars before.
My favorite time travel story is down the shore. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is that Jack Daniels or is that Crown or is that Johnny Walker? Which one was that?
That was my good friend Jonathan Walker.
Jonathan Walker.
Yeah, like probably drank a bottle of it. Like not proud of it. But look, let's preface. Before this, we were at Tiki that day. Oh, drinking like screwdrivers, like it was our job.
Yes, doing what we're supposed to do.
Correct. It was our job. Fuck it.
We were at Tiki. At our shore house, drinking all day. Now, in the hot sun in Point Pleasant at Tiki Bar, you're drinking those screwdrivers. They're going down. Everybody's having a good time. Fucking soaking up the sun. Bop, bop, beep. Having a great time.
We got ready. We took showers. And I'm like, you know what's good we should do? I brought a bottle of Johnny Walker. I'm going to try to drink as much of this motherfucker as I can.
Man, did you show Johnny Walker how to take a stroll that night. So we leave. Now, I don't remember the first bar, but I believe we went to Parker House.
It was the Parker House, yeah.
Okay.
And this is back. So this is, obviously, we're old fucks. So this is before Uber. So we took the Briggs fucking van there.
That's right. Yeah. So now, if anybody out there knows the Parker House, I don't know if that's Manasquan.
Manasquan, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
The Parker House closes at 12. Let me just preface this. 12 o'clock. A bar closes at 12 o'clock. Let me tell you my face.
Residential area, that's why.
The first time we went to that bar, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna back this up a second. The first time we ever went to that bar, it was like me, you, Vinny, John. But I remember being in there going, bro, how come we never came to this bar before? Fucking the band, fucking people are awesome, fucking drinks are flowing, it's a fucking cool little setup, the girls, this and that and this, and I'm sitting there going, I love it here. We're going to come here for the rest of the summer. Last call. What?
What?
What? Last call. Oh, they must. Oh, the guy must be. He must be new. He must be new. So all of a sudden, I start to see fucking like the people start cleaning up, and I'm like I had to ask 3 people the same question. Excuse me.
Hey, excuse me. Pardon me. Are they fucking with us?
Town ordinance. And I don't know if you remember what happened that night.
No.
We get into a cab. So before I finish this one story, we leave the Parker house. I asked people, I go, where would you go next? Where would you go next? Because like we were always like, Seaside and Point Pleasant.
And they were like, the fuck home.
They were like, you gotta go to
Leggett's. Oh.
Leggett's. Now, again, watch this. If anybody out there is listening, they know, oh, Leggett's right around the corner. So I get out. I hail a cab. The guy goes, where you going? I'm like, Leggett's, the 3 of us. He goes, hop in, go up to the light, make a right. He pulls over. I'm like, everything all right? He goes, Leggett's. Go fuck yourself.
That's pretty funny. We were like legit like 50 feet from it.
It was like 2 hot dogs on a burp and you would have been there.
Oh, fuck.
All right. So back to what I was explaining. So Parker House, we're online. Now these bars tend to have lines.
Yes. And again, to paint a picture for the listeners, this is smack dab in the middle of a residential area.
Oh yeah, like
houses, backyards, fucking.
Oh, if you start acting a fool, like the cops are gonna get you right quick. So now I don't know what happened, but the drunk fairy.
I know what happened. Tiki screwdrivers and a bottle of fucking Johnny Walker later. Turns out,
Turns out that they're letting people in. You're waiting, letting people in. Me and you are online, and I'm holding you up online. Now, if you're holding your friend up,
you're fucked.
At the first bar,
you're fucked.
You're fucked. Now, I'm feeling good, but when you see your friend way mushad, then you know that you kind of sober up a little bit, right? So now, this is the best. You're like, I remember this. We're sitting there, and I'm like, all right, listen, when we get in there, he's like, I gotta pee. I gotta pee. I'm like, all right, bro. Who the fuck is this bouncer? Fucking won't let us in. Fucking let us in. I'm like, and you're not. But I'm going to preface to the people that you're not you're a jerk off, but you're not like a whatchamacallit. Like, you're not like this big, tough, loud, fucking, like, I'm going to go fuck people up when I drink person.
I don't remember much about that night, but I remember that this bouncer would have fucking ended me. Ended me in 3 fucking seconds. So anyway, go ahead. Before he let us in.
So now we're online, and I remember... who's this fucking guy? Fucking let us in. I'm just like, oh God, this is just. I just remember, like, there was more people. Like, I don't know if we had to wait for Vinny or Vinny was meeting us there or something. So now you're like, I gotta fucking pay. I take you offline. I take you in the back, and I'm like, where the fuck is this kid gonna pee? And so I look around, and me with my bright ideas, I'm like, all right, come here, let's go. I take you in the back, and next thing you know, you're peeing under someone, a mother, doing dishes.
I remember like it was yesterday. I'm peeing in a bush, looking in the window. There's a mother just like doing dishes after dinner, and I'm like, I had fucking, oh my God, what a fucking disaster.
I'm like, if we don't get caught now, the night is going to be tits.
Yes.
Because how could you not get caught?
Correct.
So we did not get caught. We eventually got back online, got into the Parker house, drank more because, well, what would you, I mean, you would drink more, no?
Yeah.
Then we ended up at Headliners.
Which in the grand scheme of things, isn't very close to the Parker house.
No.
So, again, in the theme of time travel, without a fucking DeLorean, I'm in the Parker house, drinking fucking RB&Vs, fucking feeling good, blah, blah, blah.
Now, if anybody has been to the fucking Headliners, it's so loud in there. It's fucking that it was always loud. The music inside was always loud. I remember being inside, looking at you, head down on the table. I'm like, I don't know, Vin. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this kid. All of a sudden, your head pops up. You look around, and like you saw like almost they rebooted your hard drive in your head. You popped up, and you were like, okay. And I look at you, and I just look at you, and I say to you, I go, I'm proud of you.
Dude, so again, obviously I wasn't like passed out, but like when you're time traveling, aka blacking out, you know what the fuck is going on because you're not forming the memory. I remember just having a Red Bull vodka in my hand, leaning on the bar. I come to, and when you said, yo, I'm fucking so proud of you, it sent a fucking shiver of fucking fear through my body. I'm like, what? What do you mean? What are you proud of me? What the fuck? Dude, no fucking record.
You're like, proud of me. The last time we talked, we were at Tiki.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, that's the worst, dude. When like you can't recall time. Bad. It's not a good look, as the kids say. All right, here we go. Normally, this podcast is called Not These Two Fucking Guys, but guess what? Today is this one fucking guy because congratulations to Archie because his wife Lisa is actually being induced today. But this interview for me was way too important for me to reschedule because I didn't know when that would happen. And I don't know if there's enough superlatives that I can give in the English language to tell you what this guest means to me as a lifelong mixed martial artist, mixed martial arts fan. He's a pioneer of the sport. He's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of mixed martial arts. And I am so thankful that he's going to give us a little bit of time today. The great, the legend, Frank Shamrock.
Hey,
What's
brother.
up, pal?
Man, life is good. I can't complain.
Awesome. Everybody's doing well in your family during this COVID-19 lockdown?
Yeah, everybody's good. Everybody's healthy. Certainly life has changed. I'm relearning algebra for the sixth grade. So that's right about the time I dropped out of regular school. So it's way a huge eye-opener, wake-up call for me.
And I got news for you. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and the way they teach math now with Common Core is not how
It's
you and
changed.
I learned it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all changed. So the good news is now you can Google the math solution. So if we can't figure something out, what we do is we look up the actual formula, and then we kind of reverse engineer it and look for the most simple method. So that's actually been quite effective.
Nice. So tell us what you're up to now. I mean, you haven't obviously haven't fought competitively in probably over 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Just let the crowd know what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, for certain. Well, I split my time between being crazy super dad and my daughter is now 12. And so I hang out with her a lot. I'm a very blessed father. I get to spend, morning, noon, and night with her, pick her up from school every day. And then when I'm not doing that, I do coaching still, but not for mixed martial arts. I do it for executive leadership, entrepreneurs, entrepreneur groups. Yeah. So, and that entails personal one-on-one coaching, as well as I do a lot of speaking on stages. And then when I'm on that stage, I'm either doing, telling stories, doing leadership type speaking, or I do my other hobby, which is our family operates a family charity called the Shamrock Way. And we help at-risk communities. So I'm either raising money on stage or launching programs in communities that help others that are at risk. And so that's pretty much my life. I don't really have anything else going on.
Well, anything else? That sounds like a handful. Like I wouldn't have time for that. But
yeah, it's a full life.
I know that's definitely near and dear to your heart. Everyone knows your backstory. of how you grew up, in a foster home. So, I mean, I'm sure that's definitely something that's a passion project of yours.
Yeah, it really is. And, it's really the power of one man, Bob Shamrock, sort of, taking me in and mentoring me and becoming a father and then eventually adopting me. And so that's why I have the life that I have today, as well as the sport. Bob's the one that told me to get into mixed martial arts to build up my body, my mind, and my spirit, and, kind of gave me the foundation for being a man. So I still follow all the stuff he taught me. And I just teach all that to both my leadership groups and my executives. And then also that's the same information I use when I do these programs in communities.
That's awesome. So these are values that have been instilled in you since you were a youth. And you're still using them today, now passing them on, which I think is amazing. Yeah. Well, I was a knucklehead. I was a street thug and a criminal. And everyone laughs when I tell my stories on stage because they're so, it seems so different than who I am now. But that's who I was at one time. I was a street kid. I grew up on the streets. I left home when I was 11, and I spent 10 years in incarcerations all the way up until I was in adult prison. And that's what initially got you into mixed martial arts. That's right. Yeah, well, I woke up in prison basically and realized that it wasn't a game. Crime wasn't a tool, to sort of move from place to place, although it had gotten me out of my, originally abusive home. I just kept doing it. And I didn't realize there was a rap sheet building. There was a clock ticking until at one point they were like, no, you're going to prison for years and years. So it was the first time I had, a chance to sort of wake up and then, make some decisions about my life. And luckily at that time, Bob Shamrock stayed with me. He was still there as a mentor, as a father. And he recommended that I keep building my body, that I keep building my mind. And, his advice, build your body, build your mind, build your spirit. And, it'll come along, whatever that is, sports, athletics, whatever it is will come when you're ready. And that's right around the time mixed martial arts started. Yeah. When reading all your stuff and being a fan of yours, it didn't seem like there's a big period of time between being in prison and in trouble to actually being a professional mixed martial artist. Yeah, no, there was all of 48 hours before that. No, I got, when I got out of prison, Bob, he'd always sort of coached me on it, but he didn't really tell me what it was. I didn't know what mixed martial arts was, or at the time, no holds barred, or even UFC. I didn't understand it. And he sort of, positioned it like, well, it's kind of like wrestling for, it's like a wrestling, performance. And so I was familiar with wrestling, and I was familiar with collegiate wrestling, but and professional wrestling, but I didn't really understand even what it was at the time. So, yeah, Bob picked me up from Folsom Prison in 1994, April of 94. He's like, go out and have a good time. And so that was April 5th of 1994. April 6th, he dropped me off at the dojo. And then I never left for 16 years. I never left. Wow. So initially when you first started competing, what kind of competitions were they? Was it more bare knuckle boxing, like that kind of stuff, or? Yeah, well, back then the UFC had just started. So there was the UFC no holds barred movement and was slowly sort of evolving. But the real money was to be made in Japan, where this was a sport on television, pancration style. Yeah. And so, within months of me starting to train, and I knew nothing about fighting. I was like a street thug, but I didn't know about real fighting, sports athletics. I'd never been in team athletics. I never made it more than a week in any of these sports. So, Ken Shamrock was my first teacher, and he started basically explaining to me, like, there's an opportunity in Japan. If you keep going, if you keep excelling, there's an opportunity in Japan. And that opportunity was with the Pancrase organization. So after about 6 months of training, he sat me down and he's like, listen, there's a shot for you. There's a new tournament coming up. You can go over there and cut your teeth and sort of start your career. And you just got to go there and finish your training. So I actually went to Yokohama, Japan while on parole. And finished my training in Japan. And I debuted in Pancrase in December of that year. And your first fight there in that tournament, that was against Boss Rutan, and you beat him. Yeah, Boss Rutan. Like that, to me, that in and of itself sounds amazing about how quickly you adapted to the sport. Yeah, totally. Well, I was a gifted athlete, and I one thing I did do once I went to prison is I realized I did screw my life up, and I started sort of laying it all out. I had some good counselors who were like, listen, you're like, you're a screw up, and they really helped
helped me sort of see what I had done. And having Bob as a coach and as a mentor and as a father figure, he was very persistent on sort of feeding me opportunity. He's like, no, keep building your body. This is the tool. This is the tool. So even though I was kind of stuck there and I had nothing really to do but work out, I created this really, for me, it created a good lifestyle of sort of building myself, working on myself, and then preparing for X. And it just happened to be that X was, fighting and pancreation and, fighting boss was like crazy because I didn't really know how to fight. I just knew I didn't want to lose. I didn't want Ken to beat me up for not winning. And, I knew I was strong. And so luckily he was young in the game. He didn't really know, the full game of mixed martial arts at the time. So I was able to beat him on attrition and wrestling and, the stuff I knew at the time. But what a change. I went from convict in Folsom to rock star in Japan, within 8 months.
So talk about that, being a rock star in Japan. I mean, is it wild that, in another country, you've become this rock star and now you're known and your name is out there. But yet, I mean, I guess when you come back to the States, you still have a little bit of anonymity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the weirdest thing because it's straight out of a movie. Like you get on a plane, you fly somewhere, and everyone wants to hang. Like you're literally a rock star. There's people driving, talking for you, feeding you gifts. Then you come back and, at the time we lived in Lockford, California. So it was like a small rural, farming and wine town. And no one knew who we were. We were the knuckleheads in the dojo behind the stereo, installation center in some industrial neighborhood. So it was really bizarre. And especially when you think, when I went to prison, like I was a nerd in prison. Everyone else was in a gang and they were doing all this stuff. And I was studying bodybuilding and I was going to college and, I would read every day, like a lot. I was trying to educate myself because it was the first time I sat with myself for a year and realized I didn't know all this stuff. Like I was smart, I was built, but I didn't know anything. And the stuff I did know was wrong, being criminal, stealing, that stuff was wrong. And so it was the first time I had a chance to like sit with myself and sort of, make a commitment to improving myself. And I carried that same discipline throughout my fighting career.
So where the U.S. fans had their first foray into you was the UFC, it seems like. How did you get into the UFC? Obviously, it's after Pancrase, and I know you had a couple fights in between, but how did you get into the UFC?
Yeah, I got a call from Art Davey, who was the matchmaker at the time, and he pitched me on. I could see the sport was in flux. We were kind of getting kicked off of cable, and we were coming out of that sort of shock phase where 2 men enter, 1 man dies and leaves, and like it was this kind of shock value, and it worked great until the politicians and the media turned on us, and then it became a liability. So right at that time, I could see the maturity of the sport or the need for the sport to mature. And I got a call from Art Davey. He's like, listen, we're launching weight classes. We're looking for, really a representative, to sort of be the face of this middleweight, weight class sort of sports evolution. And I was like, oh yeah, they're calling for me. And I realized they weren't calling for me. They're calling because the fight was in Japan. I was famous in Japan.
Gotcha.
They wanted Kevin Jackson to be that guy. He was the Olympic gold medalist. He would hit all these accolades. And so, when I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, they're bringing me in to get my ass kicked. I'm the opponent because I'm famous in Japan, not because they want me to be the guy. But, I ended up beating him and becoming the guy. And then that led to my UFC career.
So UFC, you went 5-0. You were the first, at the time was the middleweight champion, which now is, I guess, light heavyweight.
Yeah.
You obviously you beat a ton of legends there, and I think one of the most famous fights was against Tito Ortiz.
Sure.
Who at the time, I mean, Tito was always big for that weight class. Talk about some of the challenges in facing him, because he was, obviously you guys are, both young then, but he was primarily a wrestler. And what I've always been admired is, I mean, you're known as like the first complete MMA fighter. I mean, anywhere the fight went, you could handle yourself, and you were, you excelled. Back, again, in the infancy of UFC, it was sometimes someone was just a striker, someone was just a jiu-jitsu player, just a judo guy. but you were able to put it all together so well.
Yeah, well, that's what they told me I was supposed to do. So that's what
You just listened to them.
I just followed directions, but no, I mean, I after my Japan experience and then when I before the UFC, I had a fight in Hawaii against John Lober, and I lost. And it was really a turning point for me because I realized I was kind of playing this sportsman game and in a game of fighting. And, I kind of realized like, you got to just kick people's asses. You really got to be ready to sort of, break an arm, break a leg, like really put it down. And so once I made that mental shift, kind of opened up this section of me where I realized I had to figure out the sport. And part of that was, I knew from growing up on the streets and teaching martial arts and traveling around that people really didn't know what they were talking about. People would be like, yeah, and you do this and you do that. But, I was studying it every single day and I was applying it with my hands. And so I realized like a lot of it wasn't real. It was their idea, but they'd never tested it. And so it was through that testing and through that exploration and through that same kind of nerdy scholastic approach that I had in prison, I was able to systematically work through all of these techniques. And I realized you needed to have a complete system. So that you were never vulnerable. And it was, the same concept that Bruce Lee talked about in his Jeet Kune Do. There's always a way, and it's the most amount of damage with the least amount of effort. So I was kind of studying these higher principles, and they allowed me to sort of open my mind up. And, one of the goals became to become the first complete guy. And Tito just happened to be, I was probably 90% when I ran into Tito. But he was definitely the next level athlete. I'd fought big guys, I fought big guys in Japan, but they weren't the same athleticism and they weren't the same, structure as like Tito's wrestling. And it was a huge physical challenge to overcome, the size difference. I mean, he's a head taller than me. Like, it's ridiculous. When we did our face-off poster, they made me stand on a wooden box, like a soapbox. The guy was so embarrassed, he finally slid it out. He's like, it just doesn't look right because you're like staring up at him like a child. But after fighting Tito, like I totally knew that I was inches away from really having the perfect system, if you will, and that it would stack up against any style. And if you watch that fight today, I mean, it literally, that fight could be on any night and it looks like modern mixed martial arts because I was in that, almost complete phase.
Yeah, that fight was, one of my favorites and for sure a fight that, like you said, holds up over time. So after that, when you were almost done with UFC, your first retirement, was that it because you wanted to be a free agent and you were having a... Yeah. And I got my first Hollywood agent and lawyer and they read the contract and they're like, this is crazy. You can't, you're literally giving everything away, for these guys' financial gain. And the risk of it is, all the risk was on me. And so the advice I was getting was like, listen, you got to get out of this contract. Like if you can't keep going on like this. And so, my first retirement was really about getting out of that contract, becoming a free agent, defining the stuff I wanted to do and the risks that I wanted to take. I wanted to be an actor and I want to do all these different things. But inside of that contract, I was very, very stuck with the things that I could do. And then, I'm a businessman. So when you look at the trajectory of the sport, the growth and the financial opportunities, they were nosediving. Sure. And so like every time I fought, I was making less money. I was like, how is this working? So it was not enough money for way too much risk where they had way too much control. And, I broke the mold with that retirement because I was able to get out of that very lengthy controlling contract. You were pretty much the first free agent in mixed martial arts.
I totally was.
And listen, and that kind of thinking is ahead of your time. And if and I think a lot of fighters now, if they feel that they're signing a contract and the contract's unfair, you have to, as the athlete, have to have some kind of recourse. So I think you did wonders for the sport and mixed martial artists that followed you to really put some thought into that.
Yeah, it's definitely changed the game. And guys like Connor and even Ronda, they now can really monetize their value because they know now the value exists. Before it didn't. You signed everything away, you fought until you were done, and then you just kind of disappeared. So I was really proud of and it was all mentors. Like I I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know it was a crappy contract until I got my first, mentor lawyer. And he's like, this is crazy. You'll never achieve the dreams that you're telling me you want to achieve inside of this contract. And so that was my reason.
My friends and I, again, we were into the first couple of UFCs, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then, kind of got out of it for a bit. But then, went back and, there was a lot of tape trading at that time, and watch your Pancration fights and your UFC fights. And so 2006 was the first time that, I got back into the sport. I'll say in 2005, Chuck Liddell was on the rise. Ultimate Fighter was coming out. It was almost like a rebirth, and it was more, for sport, and it kind of got me back into it. But watching, you fight Cesar Gracie, getting to watch you fight live for the first time, lost my fucking mind with that knockout. Nice. Let me tell you, one of my, it didn't last long, but one of my favorite fights because of who you were to me and my friends.
Nice. Yeah, that was a special night, man, because it was, just the growth of the sport, like everything had sort of grown to that moment. And then, be in San Jose, like I literally hosted the 5 o'clock news at my weigh-in. They're like, we're throwing it to Frank, because by then I was a broadcaster. By then I had all these different, skill sets. And so they literally, I was like on CBS News, and they're like, all right, we're throwing it to Frank. He's weighing in. I'm like, all right, guys, I'm weighing in for the big fight. Like, it was so, it was such a big moment. But it was also time, like you're saying, Chuck Liddell, like the show, like it had kind of grown into be this sort of important moment for me to go out and compete. And yeah, it was massive. Like we turned away like 3,000 people. There were 3,000 people in the streets.
Wow.
After we sold the ramp, after we sold the walkout, like we sold everything we could in that arena. And I think we still hold the North American live attendance record at the HP Pavilion for that show. Because the heat was just fantastic. And yeah, thank God I knocked him out in 20 seconds, because it was a long night already.
You fought like you were double parked outside.
Right, yeah. It was, but I couldn't believe, like, when I went out, I looked at him and he's like standing straight up. And I was like, we're going to duke this out? I was like, oh man, this is fantastic.
I mean, you essentially put Strikeforce on the map as becoming a major promotion. And you've done a ton of things with them as far as fighting, obviously commentating. Talk about your time with Strikeforce.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I was, once I retired, I became a free agent. I was really looking into different roles. So I became a sports broadcaster. I became an analyst. I became a league owner. I was taking equity in leagues and helping them launch on pay-per-view. So I really opened up, my ability to earn and then control my own brand. And, when Scott Coker came along and he's like, listen, I'd known him for years through martial arts. He'd done kickboxing. He was a very solid martial artist and a good promoter. And, we were always trying to get K1 to come here and do like an MMA league. And we were always doing business with Japan and trying to drag them over here. But between the two cultures, it was always a challenge. So when he came to me one day, and we'd have lunch once a week. But when he came to me, he's like, listen, Frank, I want to do mixed martial arts. He's like, I'm serious. I'm like, well, how serious? Are you going to write a big check? And he's like, oh, I'm going to write a big check. And so, it was really his desire to be in it, my trust of him. And then, the fact that I knew how to tell a story. I knew how to promote a fight. I knew what to do. And I was just nervous about, risking that with other people because they didn't know what to do. And so when Scott came along, besides him taking the financial risk, he had all the accolades. He's a guy I could trust. And, we had a lot of coffees and I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because I tell him, here's the problems. Here's what's going on. And he's like, no, for certain. But it was the first time where I had really control of my stage. So like a good actor, all the people were cast to help support my role.
Sure.
And so it wasn't like I had, adversarials, everybody was like, okay, Frank, what are we doing now? And I'm like, oh, here's the best story to tell. And it created this magical environment where if you were a talent like I was, Gilbert Melendez come in and be like, yeah, I want to fight so-and-so. This is the reason why. And it just made so much sense. Like it was like a new opportunity in the sport where before you fought who was most popular because they said so. And there was no real rhyme or reason. It was, 1 + 2 = the event. And what it allowed the talent to do was really perform. you see those fights with Thompson and Melendez. You see it was amazing the performances that these guys gave under that new portfolio, that new company, because they felt the freedom to do so. And that's, I fought way longer than I thought I was going to, because, for me, it was the best time ever that I was able to go to work, because I had full trust of my people, the promotion, the storyline. Cesar Gracie challenged me. And I was like, sure, this sounds amazing. Shamrock Gracie, like, of course. Phil Baroni, challenged me. But those were the type of moments where it was great television. It was great storytelling. And, to think we were just a local promotion with no television, and we were able to build that all the way to CBS is just extraordinary.
So you, like I said, you were the first UFC middleweight champ. You were a champion pancrase. You were the first WEC light heavyweight champ, first Strikeforce middleweight champ. I mean, that's being a pioneer, and that's something that you were successful every place you went. What kept you going, and what was the besides the guy across from you wanting to knock your head off, what was your motivation to keep on going?
Well, in the beginning, it was to become the best, and become the first complete martial arts, to kind of complete the study, because I was a nerd, so it was a martial arts study. We're trying to find this system that will defeat all systems. So that was my first study. And then I found the system. I beat everybody, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I didn't make any money. so then it became, I got to figure out a way to make more money, because that was what I was needing in my life. I didn't have enough money to sort of do the things I wanted to do, to provide for my family, to live how I wanted to live. So then it became a monetary exploration. And then I made a ton of money. And then it was like, well, what is the next goal? But the next goal became, the sport had done so much for me that the next goal was to make sure that we got the sport on network television, because that was the real end of this game. If we could get on ESPN, then we're a real sport. And so, the last, 7-8 years of my career were entirely dedicated to being a champion, being a fighter, doing this thing, but also being a spokesman on behalf of the sport and explaining why it's so valuable and how we get to that next level. And then once we got there, my job was done. Now it was just, I didn't want to get beat up by Nick Diaz. I didn't want to, but when you live in this martial lifestyle for so long, competing was the performance. That's where it's like your birthday. So for me, it was a huge celebration. The work was hard. The lifestyle was lonely. It was a rough journey. But that one time, once a year, it was extraordinary. And so I lived for those moments in the last 5 years of my career. I only fought once or twice a year. And so it was literally like my birthday. But all my friends would fly in from all over the world, and people would fly from Australia, Brazil. Like, it was crazy because by then it had been so long that I've been teaching and learning and sharing and fighting, that the fan base had grown so big. And it was that fan base that kept me going, that performance, that moment, of performing. And in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to train. I would just show up and perform like an actor. But it never worked out like that.
Well, you have to be super disciplined to be able to, keep a training schedule, keep your commentating duties. Like you said, doing sports casting. Do you ever feel like, oh, bullshit, maybe I'm not giving this enough, or maybe, I didn't train enough because I had to go do press for this?
Yeah, totally. Sometimes, I always put the training first, because that was, I knew it was through winning that I was able to keep all this going. So I was always able to put the training first. And, that's why Strikeforce and that whole community was so good to me. And even the fans, because they understood. They're like, oh man, you got to go to bed. Like, we're good. But I have to say, at the end, it was hard to be a spokesman and a broadcaster and a fighter and a champion, to do all those different roles. And then I had a daughter, so I was trying to be a father. So, certainly at the end, it was much harder for me. But, I had such passion for it, and I really wanted us being the entire sport to achieve that goal of being on network television where any person could turn it on, make a value decision, decide what to do with it. And, my real reason for doing that is martial arts had done so much for me, from prison all the way to who I am today. The end goal was to get martial arts in front of millions and millions of people, so they could say, hey, maybe this is something good for me, and go out and have the same experience that I did. Not to become a champion or, go beat people up or even compete, but just the, learning about your mind, body, and spirit, having a goal, progressing a little each day, building a community, and, understanding yourself better. That did so much for my life. And so, the reason I wanted to be on network television was not to make money. I wanted everyone to see this and be like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm going to go check it out and then hopefully be impacted.
Well, that's no doubt, you were super influential in that. And that has to be one of your, proudest achievements of all the, the accolades that you have. So that really says something.
Yeah.
Are you keeping up with what's going on in MMA today?
Nah, it's too much. I watch the stock market and I keep an eye on Hollywood but no, I don't follow it all that closely. I still have some friends who compete. Scott is still one of my best friends. But no, my daughter doesn't get it. She's 12. She's like, Dad, why are they fighting again? I don't. So I'm pretty much out of the space from the day to day.
Is there any fighter that you wish you got matched up with where it just didn't happen, or an opponent that you wish that you think you could have done big business with?
The only guy that I didn't get to was Sakuraba. Like, he was the only guy in my journey. I thought it was super important to fight him. We had the same teachers, we had the same lineage, so there was a crossover there that I think would have kind of wrapped up, my study. And so I was really disappointed that, Pride and I couldn't come to a deal and figure out how to get him and I to fight. But that's the only one. Everyone else, fights popped up that I, were hot at the time, but he's the only one where, if I was 25 and I could do it over again, I would have found a way to do it.
That seems, you guys fighting in Japan would have been stupid big business.
Oh, I know, man.
I'll be home tomorrow.
How does your body feel physically not competing in 10 years?
Yeah, well, that's I had one of my clients over today. Who's an actor, big time actor. And I took him for a hike. I did a little mentoring coaching, and I was having this conversation with him because he's like, oh, my back hurts from this and that. Because he used to also be a break dancer and a performer and all these things. And he's like, how does your body feel? And it feels so weird to say this, but it's like it never happened.
Wow.
Like, I have no pain, I have no discomfort, I have no imbalances. Like, I have nothing. And for, even before I started, I had back pain because I got a spondy in my L3. So when I was 16, my leg started dragging and I had this horrible pain in my back. And the doctor told me I had broken one of my vertebrae. But about 2 years ago, I finally met a guy who fixed it. And so that was the only thing that was left over in my life that was painful. And that was before I was fighting. So everything else I've been able to heal through hiking and good nutrition and rehabilitation. So it's the weirdest thing. I pop up in the morning and I'm like, did I really do all that? It's wild. Yeah. Yeah. So I've just been so blessed in that way. And I think a lot of that was, I was always looking past fighting. So I was always like, okay, we're going to, fighting is a way to get to over here, not as an end all. And so I was always trying to exit, become an actor, become, a producer, a legal, because I was looking for the next thing. And so it sort of gave me this mindset like, okay, we broke that, so we have to heal it, fix it properly, because at some point there's the next thing. And I feel so blessed because all my friends that are pro athletes, they got one leg shorter than the other. They got a shoulder that doesn't work. Everybody's got something. I mean, I got nothing.
What do you think gave you the foresight to know that you needed to have a natural progression and to have a plan for after fighting? I mean, because, the sport of fighting is so intense that it's almost like you have to immerse yourself in it. But you had the foresight to say, okay, hey, I want to do these other things too. Fighting is going to get me to a certain place, but that may not be the end all be all. Yeah,
it's totally my mentoring and the people that I sought out for knowledge, because they were the ones who told me that. If you'd asked me, I'd have been like, nope. And in fact, if you listen to old interviews, I'm like, I'm going to fight until I'm 45 or I die. Because I never, before I was 30 or so, I never believed there was a life past that. I made all the plans. People would tell me, I'd be like, okay, I'll do that. But I never really, truly believed that until, I became a sports broadcaster, until all these things happened. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm actually leaving. Like I'm building the bridges to go do that. And even though I retired and I took, became a free agent and stuff, it still didn't really sink in. So I was just doing actions that I was told to do through good mentoring. And now as I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. Like, of course you can't fight forever. Like, of course you, like, that's crazy. And even when I got a handful of professional athletes that are young, and and I'm like, guys, I guarantee your career will come to an end. They're like, what are you talking about? I make $1 million a year. And I'm like, yes, but just, you need to understand, like, it's an absolute guarantee that this will end. And then you got the next thing. And if you don't save, if you don't prepare, if you don't protect, you'll literally end up with nothing. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm going to make $3 million next year. And I'm like, yeah, but just at some point, it's literally going to stop one day. And then you have to be ready for the next. You have to prepare. You have to plan. And I was just super blessed to have great mentoring. And then, probably 50% of it sunk in, but I took actions on that 50%.
Very nice. So I'm a huge pro wrestling fan as well, right?
Nice.
So I got to ask you, and I thought this was the coolest fucking thing at the time. I think it was WrestleMania 25. You were there with Mickey Rourke, right? You were in the front row.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. With in wrestling, they call it a shoot, and I think he was wrestling Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
You were brought there in case something went down. Is that right?
Totally, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Mickey's like straight, gangster. Mickey's like, from the street. So he, we had, so the story goes back a little bit because I'd fought Phil Baroni, and I did that sleeper move to him.
Yes.
Well, I did this, and I pointed at him, and so I'm just training at the gym, and the phone rings. And it's Douglas Crosby, one of my old friends who's a stunt coordinator. And he's a stunt coordinator at the time on The Wrestler. And so he's like, Frank, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah, what's going on, Doug? And he's like, hey, Mickey wants to talk to you. I go, what? It's like, Mickey Rourke, we're doing a movie. He wants to talk to you. I'm like, oh, put him on. And he gets on the phone. Unbeknownst to me, Mickey's a huge fan. And he watches all my fights. And I'm like, oh, man. So he's like, listen, I'm in this character, and it's fantastic, and I want to use your sleeper move. I don't want to do it without your permission. He's like, so I'm calling to ask if it'd be okay. I'm like, yeah, Mickey, that sounds like, of course, man. I'd be honored. He's like, no. He's like, I'm honored, man. He's like, oh, keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, okay. So he's like, well, when the movie comes out, I'll invite you down. So, 6 months later, I get a call from the studio, and they're like, hey, movie's coming out. Mickey wants you to come down. So I go to the premiere. We hang out. We have a blast. Instant friendship. Start talking about fighting ad nauseum. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. So then, the movie was such a success, and everybody loved Mickey and the whole comeback vibe. So then he has a beef with Jericho. I think it was Larry King Live. And, words turn. Mickey takes it all serious. Like, he doesn't know. He's not like he's not like a storyline guy.
It's a real deal.
If you're picking on him or picking a fight, he's like real deal. He's gonna knuckle up. So, Vince calls him and says, hey, you guys, do you want to come to WrestleMania and work this out? Da, 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 da. So Mickey calls me like the next day, and he's like, listen, man, I got a chance. I got an opportunity. They're going to pay me a ton of money. Here's what they want to do. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great, Mickey. And he's like, listen, I want you to come with me. And I go, for what? And he's like, if they try to screw me, I go, all right. I said, Mickey, listen, I think this is show business. I know wrestling. And I said, they're not, if that's the deal, that's the deal. I don't think they're going to try to put one over. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I want you there, and I want you to bring one of your baddest dudes. And if things go south, I want you guys to clear the ring. And I'm like, all right. So me and Clint Coronel, the Aztec, just a killer. We go with him, and basically we're his cronies. We sit ringside the whole nine. And the best part was when we're sitting in the dressing room getting ready, Mickey's hitting mitts. He's, elbowing thing. Like, he's out. He's totally, he's ready. He's ready to do battle. And then apparently the word got out that we're all back there just, being crazy. And so Jericho came back, and he's like, oh, man, hey, here's how it's going to go down. And oh, no. And then Vince came back, and we all worked it out. But, yeah, it was I was there to get Mickey's back in case something went south.
That was so awesome. I remember watching that live and seeing you. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, okay. They're looking for a shoot. They're looking for Jericho to shoot on Mickey Rourke.
Yeah. Well, Mickey, the truth, and he sat me down. He's like, listen, man. He goes, I screwed my life up. This is my chance. I've come back.
Yeah.
He's like, but I can't be screwed. I can't get, I can't get hurt. None of this stuff can happen. It has to be what they're saying it's going to be. And I can't take any chances. So you're my guy. I was like, I got you, Mickey.
That's awesome. Listen, this has been so much fun. Can you just tell the people where they could find you on social media?
Absolutely. I am at Frank Shamrock everywhere. And on YouTube, I am the Frank Shamrock.
Awesome. Well, listen, you're one of our idols. I thank you so much. You're a gentleman for taking some time out and talking to us. We support what you do and your story and just absolutely appreciate it. So thank you so much. The legend, Frank Shamrock. Thanks, Frank.
Right on, brother. Peace.
All right, brother.
I am definitely jealous, to say the least. That was an awesome interview. He seemed like such a cool dude, down to earth, a fighter, trainer, businessman, spokesperson. He was headed down a wrong path. He is living his best life, as the kids say. So please check out Frank Shamrock if you haven't already. Wish I was on that interview, Rock, but I'm very, very happy that my wife and I didn't give birth, but my wife gave birth to our second daughter, and we are over the moon. I missed it for a good reason. So with that being said, Rock, is there anything you want to say to the people?
If you don't think it's fair and you weren't aware that in New Jersey, because of this terrible virus, you have to eat outside when it's hot as Satan's taint and your balls are sticking to the motherfucking chair, then you're listening to Not These Two Fucking Guys podcast.
We out.